There we go. I think we should be good to go. Welcome everyone to the Trail Adopter Workshop. I hope that this is the place you intended to be. Tonight's presentation is going to be delivered by our regional trail coordinators. These are the folks that you are probably most familiar with here at the North Country Trail Association. These are the folks who are on the ground and in the field with you across the trail. So from west to east, we have Matt Davis, who covers North Dakota, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. And he is attempting to get on this call right now. So we are going to keep trying to let him in. We have Kenny Wazik, who is in Michigan, which is only one state, but there is a lot of miles in that one state. So don't let that fool you. And then Lauren Kennedy Little, who covers Ohio and Pennsylvania, and Stephanie Campbell, who covers New York and Vermont. My name is Val Bader. I am our Director of Trail Operations. I am lucky enough to live in Pennsylvania, but I work trail-wide with this wonderful group of folks. We also have Matt Robotham, who many of you have interacted with if you have a map question or have ever asked anything about our GIS program. He is our GIS program manager. So that is our trail management team. And we will be delivering this presentation for you this evening. So I'll kick it over here. I will advance it to the next slide. So I think we have a poll question for you all. And working with two screens, so I'm not sure the best way to do this. But our question is, what is the number one enemy of trails? Going to see if, oh, that tried to end the meeting. I don't know if one of the other folks is able to pull up that poll. There is a button if you are a host that you could pull up that poll on the bottom of the screen. I don't know if Kenny or Stephanie or Lauren is able to do that. All right, looks like it's up and folks are answering. The number one enemy of trails. All right, looks like we got most folks have answered that. And we have few folks have said OHV use. Looks like two folks said OHV use. We had some folks say horses. And the two most popular are timber harvest. 20% of people said timber harvest, and 71% of people said water was the number one enemy of trails. And with that, I will kick it over to Stephanie to share what we think the number one enemy of trails.
Yeah, so the right answer, I guess this is an interview question for RTCs, is what's the number one enemy? And water is the number one enemy, because regardless of these other uses of the trail or of the area, it's water that we're always trying to get the trail out of or off of. So thanks for playing along. And so again, yeah, my name is Stephanie Campbell. I'm the regional trail coordinator for New York and Vermont. So glad you're here. So with that, I'll jump right in. So why trail adopters? Why do we have trail adopters? So these folks are really critical infrastructure for comprehensive trail management. Which is kind of a funny way to say it. You know, we usually think of like bridges or something as the main infrastructure, but you know, or the trail tread, but this is kind of more of the soft, like as in soft skills. The people really are the most important glue that holds this trail and this trail community together. So it could not exist without trail adopters. So we are so thankful for all those who dedicate their time and energy. So 4,800, over 4,800 miles is a lot of trail. And so it's really impossible for us to do it alone. So local volunteers are crucial to help the NCTA reach every mile. They're literally the eyes and the feet on the trail. They help us to reach all those nooks and crannies, far-reaching corners of the entire trail. And we're so grateful. So they also help provide a good experience for trail users. So being those eyes and the feet on the trail, they're looking out and they're checking everything. They're removing obstacles. You know, we're going to get into really more of the nitty gritty of what allows us to provide that good experience for trail users by the trail adopters. So next slide. All right, so now we're going to get into the roles and responsibilities. So first of all, trail adopter can also be called other things. They can be called a steward, a maintainer. For the Superior Hiking Trail Association, they're called trail section adopter or campground adopter. For the Finger Lakes Trail Conference, they are called regional trail coordinators. They have the same title as our staff. So it really doesn't matter by any other name. They are still, you know, they are still adopting a section of the trail by definition. That is what they are doing. They are being those the eyes and the feet on the ground. So their role is to ensure that the trail is in good condition and a pleasure to walk. And so then we have these responsibilities that are broken down into these buckets. So we have train, monitor, maintain, represent, and report. So first of all, training. So you're here right now. This is a training for trail adopters. But there's lots of different kinds of training that you can get trained up in, and that will depend on what your interests are. You know, there's the basics that we're going to discuss today, and then there, you know, you can have specialized interests that you can want to learn more about, and you can talk to, you know, either your NCTA regional trail coordinator, such as me, or you can talk to, there might be a trail adopter coordinator. There could, you know, your chapter, whatever your connection is, you can talk to them about additional training opportunities. And so that's just kind of your due diligence and responsibility to make sure that you're trained up and you feel prepared when you go out there to do all the other responsibilities that we're going to talk about here. And like I said, maybe even, you know, learn a few more extra skills like rigging or, you know, rock work or something fun like that. So the next responsibility is monitor. So monitoring the trail. So actually getting out there is really important. And this is going to look different depending upon what your section of trail is and how close you are to it. So if it's in your backyard, maybe you're out there every day. Maybe that's your form of monitoring. You know, that's the frequency, you know, it's very frequent. You can go for long walks, you know, or maybe it's more remote and it's further away from you. You know, the Adirondacks are in my section, and some of those areas are really remote and difficult to reach. So the trail adopters only get out there maybe twice a year. And we would say 2 to 3 times is really the minimum that we would like to see trail adopters getting out there at least once at the beginning and end of the seasons or of the main work season. And so then you're just monitoring for kind of what, making sure that the trail maintains the standards and the protocols of NCTA or the trail, the land manager. And so you should know specifically, you know, we'll talk about some of those for us, but sometimes they're different for an individual land manager. And so you should know that. and you will be monitoring, you will note and report trail damage or issues, and you will keep records for future reference and to track progress. And so when you're there, you also want to maintain, so doing basic maintenance that we'll talk about today, including drainage, corridor, marking, signage, and then you're going to be reporting on those accomplishments so that we can keep track of those, know what was done as an organization, so we feel like we have a handle on what's going on, and we can put our resources toward those issues that need looked at according to what pops up, and then represent. And my next slide is about representing. So when you're on the trail, you are representing the organization, you are representing hiking, you are representing so many things to people that you might come across. So it's really important to be cognizant and aware of that role that you're playing. And so next slide. And so representing, really critically, recruiting can be a part of this representation. So a lot of times people can be really excited about what you're doing. Wow, you're so cool. You're out here, like you get to do this and be a part of this trail community, and they want to know more. So when you're having these conversations, it's important to show interest in the volunteer, understanding, asking questions. What do they want to get out of volunteering? And you want to learn how much time and energy they have to devote to volunteering. If they're already on the trail often, they walk this section all the time, or, whatever section you're trying to get somebody to be an adopter for, then they might be a really good fit for that. If they're more interested in doing something like marketing, then maybe you can connect them with the appropriate folks. But always having a listening ear for those opportunities is a really important part of being out on the trail. And you can offer to go out with them the first time, or they can shadow you sometimes. So just feeling that they are supported, they're going to be more likely to invest. They're going to feel cared about. They're going to feel part of the community. And that's definitely part of what we are trying to provide here. So being a trail adopter is very all-encompassing in a lot of ways. And so now I'm going to kick it over to Matt Davis.
All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Matt Davis, and I am the Regional Trail Coordinator for the far western end of the trail, covering North Dakota, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. And I'm going to talk a little bit about safety. And we've heard it before, but safety is job number one. As Stephanie said, volunteers are the critical infrastructure. I say the volunteers are the heart and soul of the trail, the most valuable resource, and we want everybody to work safely because we want you to come back again. So your safety often relies on your own decisions, because as a trail adopter, oftentimes you're working alone. You're not working in a large group, or maybe not alone, but maybe with a small group. So you have to make good decisions because you are really in charge of your safety. You don't have anybody necessarily out there kind of looking over your shoulder, making sure, do you really want to do that? You have to have kind of that sense on your own. So self-awareness is critical, and we can provide a lot of the resources that you need to do the work safely. We have a lot of resources available. The National Park Service has a safety handbook, which I believe is available on our website, or certainly the National Park Service website. But there's a lot of other things as well. There's a innovative safety training program called Trail Safe, which if you're a Sawyer, you know all about, because that is one of the prerequisites. But it's I think it's a 3-day long National Park Service staff training that's jammed down into 3 hours of 8 videos that you can watch online at your own convenience. And when you finish it, you submit a completion, and I think there might be a little quiz, and you get a certification card and a pin with that Trail Safe logo. The National Park Service also has JHAs, or job hazard analyses, documents that talk about the tasks that trail adopters do, like trail maintenance, trail construction. There's also other ones for being a Sawyer or a swamper. And it outlines some of the risks that you face while you're out there, some of the potential ways that you can get hurt, some of the hazards, and then what you can do to mitigate and minimize the chance of of injury. So next slide. And it also lists the personal protective equipment, or PPE. Those are listed in those JHAs. So working alone, like I mentioned, we don't really encourage people to go out alone, but sometimes that happens. There's just life happens. You can't find a partner, or your kids are sick or whatever, and you've got to go out there. So we tell people, if you do go out alone, make sure that somebody knows where you are, how long you plan to be out there, how to get a hold of you, so that you almost have like an emergency plan ready to go, so that if something does happen and you're out there alone, people know where to start looking for you. And that's very similar to the emergency response plan, which the National Park Service has. That's more for group projects, but you can also fill it out for your own section, because it kind of forces you to think about, where's the nearest hospital? How do I get there? Where do I have cell coverage? What's the best route to get to the hospital? So yeah, lots of valuable things to think about ahead of time, because if you need to have that information at your disposal and you get injured, you might not be able to figure it all out on the fly. And yeah, that last point, enjoy the work. It's hard work, but it's very rewarding. So don't overload, the elevator. Don't do too much, because if you do too much, it's going to be less fun. So take breaks, stay hydrated, know your limitations. I always tell volunteers that I work with, there's nothing wrong with walking away from something that you don't feel comfortable tackling. Hikers are industrious people. They can find their way around things. It's not worth risking getting hurt to tackle something that maybe in the back of your mind, you're not quite sure about. So if it's too big or it's too complicated, you can report it to your chapter. Maybe a land management partner has somebody that can go out and help, or certainly, the chapter might have other volunteers that have been there and done that, and they can help. They can go out and tackle that big project. All right, next slide. So volunteers in parks, or VIP. The National Park Service runs the Volunteers in Parks, or VIP program. And it's really the federal government's way of recognizing the super valuable contributions of volunteers on not only national scenic trails, but all national park properties. There's people that volunteer at big national parks like Yellowstone, Yosemite, but certainly on our trail, the volunteers are, first and foremost. So the VIP program provides injury and liability protections for you while you're out working on the trail. So in essence, while you're volunteering, if you get injured or something happens, you're basically treated like a National Park Service federal government employee. It also allows you to earn recognition items. If you've been to any North Country Trail Association events, you'll see people wearing, snazzy button-up shirts with a VIP emblem and their name and NCTA logo. Those are things that you get when you reach certain hour thresholds as a volunteer. So it's, again, just the National Park Service's way of saying thank you for your service to the nation. And it's great to wear when you're out in the community, because it's a conversation starter. We used to have a system that allowed chapter members to automatically be covered under the VIP program, but it's changed recently. So now there's more onus on individual volunteers to sign an individual volunteer agreement form, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And it's basically, you do that, you fill out the form, you put your contact info on there, you check what kind of work you want to do. Here's what volunteer roles I'm interested in filling. And then you check to make sure that you read the job hazard analysis for those particular tasks. So once you fill out the form, as long as you don't move and you keep volunteering, you're good. You don't ever have to fill it out again. So that's good. Next slide. We'll take a look at the form, and you can see the National Park Service has the example of Susie Jones. And so you can see some of the information. Like I said, it's just contact information. At the very bottom, you see those check boxes. Susie was interested in trail construction and maintenance, and she checked that she read the personal safety and trail construction and maintenance JHAs. So if you don't check any of those, Nick from the National Park Service will call you to make sure that you did read them. But once you have that form filled out, and then I think on the second page, which I don't know if we have a slide for, nope, you just sign it and then you print it out. You have to do this paper. It's old school. You print it out, you sign it, and then you put it in the mail and you mail it back to Nick at the National Park Service, and then you're done. You're officially a VIP. And Nick is also available to answer any questions. There's a recorded webinar that's out there that goes over, all this VIP stuff. I know there's a lot of information to understand, but Nick is a great resource to help volunteers, navigate through that process. And there's, again, some good information online, including that sample form that's filled out. So one of the other things that we have available on the NCTA website is our Volunteer Resources Center. And there's a lot of information there. If there's any topic related to the North Country Trail that you want to learn more about, chances are good there's something up there that you'll find particularly interesting and valuable. And most of the stuff that trail adopters would be interested in is under the trail management section. So you can look on there and you'll find things like the adopter handbook, the North Country Trail Association's handbook for planning, design, construction, and maintenance, the crew leader handbook. There's some videos on YouTube that talk about, being a trail adopter. There's one on blazing. There's other stuff on designing new trail, tool maintenance. And there's also a tailgate safety, kind of a sample tailgate safety message that crews should be using every time they have a group work day. And that trail adopter handbook is really one of your most valuable resources. And I think we used to have paper copies that we could provide. So if you're new to this, talk to somebody in your chapter and see if there's a box of the trail adopter handbooks floating around that you can get a copy. But if not, it's available as a download on our website. And it's kind of designed to be, fit in your shirt pocket. You can actually carry it out there with you. And it's got, some basic details on some of the most pertinent things that you'll do as a trail adopter. It talks a little bit about the National Park Service trail standards, the NCTA standards. There's even a section at the end where I believe you can kind of take some of those notes that Stephanie was talking about, like maybe the day you were out there, brief description of conditions, or you could take note of problems that you need to address next time you go out there. So yeah, it's designed as something that you would carry out there with you in the field as you go. So the next thing is the handbook. That's kind of our Bible for the North Country Trail. It's got everything you need to know for planning, designing, construction, maintenance. It goes into depth in our standards. There's drawings in there. It's really a fantastic resource. That, again, is kind of the go-to if you're looking for above and beyond just what's in the adopter handbook. And then, as I mentioned, we have the crew leader handbook, which is kind of a specialized, like Stephanie said, that might be the next step if you're having fun as a trail adopter and you want to get more involved being trained as a crew leader so that you can lead projects with other volunteers. Goes into a lot of the, project planning, figuring out what tools you're going to need, what resources you're going to need. And then also, how do you effectively lead volunteers so that everybody has a good experience and wants to come back? Because just to be honest, this is something I struggle with when I'm a crew leader. I want to get the work done because that's what I love doing. But your role as a crew leader is more to make sure that everybody else on the project has what they need, work safe, is taking breaks, drinking water, do all that stuff. Because if you're just paying attention to a piece of trail that you're working on, the rest of your crew might be having a miserable experience and you might not ever see them again. So again, your crew leader role is to focus on the others. All right, some other resources that are out there. As we already talked about, each chapter has a whole army of experienced trail adopters. They're some of the best people that you can get out there and learn from. Like Stephanie said, you can shadow them, just go out and offer to help somebody who's been doing it for a long time, and you'll kind of get a good flavor for the work that trail adopters do. And you'll also, be able to learn a lot from folks that probably know an awful lot about that section of the trail. And then also the regional trail coordinators were good resources. We might not know a particular section of trail backwards and forwards, but we have a pretty good understanding of the trail standards and what we're shooting for and how volunteers work and all that stuff. So I personally love going out on trail with volunteers and talking trail. I think we're all kind of trail geeks. So yeah, we relish that opportunity to get out in the field and work with folks. And then there's some other resources. The U.S. Department of Agriculture Forest Service has some great notebooks. it's kind of like a half sheet of paper size, document that's like that thick. So maybe it'll fit in your back pocket, not your shirt pocket, but it's got a lot of resources, a lot of good information that really covers trail wide and nationwide. So there's things, building stuff out of rock, which we don't do a whole lot of out here at the west end of the trail, but other places that's very frequent occurrence. So lots of great information and resources like that. The Forest Service also has some great resources on accessibility, some guidelines, and then we also have, I believe, some links to places where that our volunteers can go online or attend in-person training with other organizations. We're part of the partnership for the National Trail System. There's online, webinars, but there's also in-person trainings. So yeah, if people want to learn more, we want to help get you into those places where you can learn more information and develop your skill set so that you can be a better trail adopter and a better volunteer moving forward. I am now going to turn it over to Lauren, who's going to talk about maintenance.
Thank you, Matt. Good evening, everyone. Lauren Kennedy Little, Ohio and Pennsylvania. Maintenance. All right, so now we get to dive into it. We'll start with maintenance and what those standards are. Typically, that will include clearing the corridor from encroaching vegetation, whether by lopping or pruning, removing any downed trees, necessary mowing, improving blazing, assessing signage, ensuring that the tread allows for proper drainage, and making sure that all structures are solid and safe. Typically, maintenance is performed 2 to 3 times a year and spaced out seasonally. Many adopters strive to get out once before Memorial Day, again in the summer when it isn't too hot, and once more before winter. Next slide. Most of the North Country Trail should be cleared or trimmed so that the corridor is about 4 feet wide by 8 feet tall. We want trails to appear natural and organic, so don't worry about trying to achieve a perfectly cleared rectangle. The goal is to keep vegetation from interfering with hikers or regularly brushing up against them. I also like to think of trimming from a seasonal perspective. So ask yourself, what can I clear easily now before it grows too big, or remove it before it requires more effort down the line? In terms of tread, the width will vary, but in general, it should be about 24 inches wide. You'll want your tread smoothed out so it's not too uncomfortable to walk on. And when possible, you want to achieve an outslope of about 3 to 5%. Outsloping will ensure that the water will run off the trail rather than down it. We'll dive into this further in a few slides. Next slide. As for pruning, a common mistake is to leave a stub. Be sure to make a clean, cut flush with the main branch so that nothing is sticking out. This is best practice not only for safety reasons, but for the interest of the tree. Proper pruning allows wood to heal easier, minimizes infection, and is aesthetically pleasing. When cutting trees down completely, be sure to stump them flat and as low to the ground as possible. Additionally, people forget to look up. 8 feet may seem high, but it makes a huge difference. An easy technique to clear above you is to walk with loppers extended overhead. If you are hitting branches, they are within the clearing limits. If you think you can safely remove them, then go for it. All in all, simply don't forget to satellite. Look up, look down, look all around. For clearing debris, be sure to move this well off trail and avoid creating piles. Taking the extra time to swamp debris well off trail and spread it out will not only make the place look less impacted, but can aid in decomposition. Another thing to avoid is lining trails with large branches or logs. Lining trails reduces water runoff and causes more maintenance problems in the long run. It's important to mention that if you plan to use a chainsaw, you must be certified to do so. This requires attending a class by the NPS approved instructors, going through the Trail Safe program, and staying current on your first aid and CPR certification. If something does need to be cut with a chainsaw, mark the location and share it with chapter leadership. Each chapter should have certified sawers to call on. Next slide. The number one objective of trail work is to keep the user on the trail and keep the water off. Water is your enemy and gravity is the catalyst to sloppy trails. Thinking about steepness and slope are ways we combat water damage and make trails desirable to hike along. The diagram on your right depicts a trail on a hillside. Berm is a trail term for debris that builds up on the downslope slide over time. Regular maintenance should include removing these berms when they begin to accumulate. By keeping the berm down, water can flow off the trail instead of down the trail. Other drainage tricks include grade dips. Grade dips are changes in trail slope and outslope that allow water to exit the trail more quickly. There are other types of drainage features out there, and the references that Matt highlighted earlier, particularly the USDA Trail Construction and Maintenance Notebook, are great sources. The major takeaway here is to avoid putting trails in flat areas, and when possible, build the trail across slope. So, what exactly is slope? The terms slope and grade are often used interchangeably. Grade, which is expressed in degrees, is how we measure trail steepness. Slopes are directional, so you will have various slopes interplaying at one time, such as a side slope or a trail slope, and they are all measured in this percent grade. The formula to calculate grade is rise over run. So for example, if a trail were to gain 10 vertical feet over 100 feet of horizontal travel, the grade is 10%. Just divide the height by the distance, or again, the rise over the run. The big ideas around slopes are the 10% rule. Keep trail slopes under 10%. Anything over that is considered steep enough that erosion will take place faster and easier. The half rule states that a trail grade should be no more than half the side slope grade. If a side slope has a grade of 10%, or basically your hillside has a grade of 10%, your trail slope, or the direction in which you are traveling, should not go above 5. We follow the half rule to make trails sustainable, and when it is broken, trails tend to become fall line trails. You'll also want to use a clinometer, and these are tools to measure grade. They can come in handy when you're trying to calculate these slopes, lay out trail, and abide by the half rule. Nowadays, a cheap alternative are smartphone apps. Soils are also very important. Ideally, you would want a loamy soil with a mixture of sand, clay, and silt. And soils will vary just like your bioregion, so depending on where you are, the soil type will change. Understanding your soil type is an essential piece to trail work. And an easy way to do this is to get your hands dirty and feel for yourself. The results can tell you a lot about the drainage, compaction, and so on. So much of what I just discussed is related to building new trail. However, it's definitely helpful to understand. Part of maintenance includes identifying these unsustainable sections of trail. The more you know about good trail design, the better you'll be able to mitigate problems and tackle drainage issues. Be sure to share any noticings, and if you have a section of trail that is maybe eroding due to too many berms, too much slope, or other drainage reasons, let your chapter leadership know. Next slide. It may seem straightforward to blaze, but just like painting, it's an art. The size, crispness, spacing, and amount are all factors that play into a well-marked trail. All blazes along the North Country Trail are the Nelson Boundary Blue paint that is ordered through the National Park Service. As you can see on this slide, you'll want a neat 2 by 6 inch size blaze, which is about the size of a dollar bill. A good height from the ground would be about 6 feet. And if the tree bark is rough, you can use a wire brush or a similar tool to smooth the surface of the tree. If the trail is already blazed properly, you'll only need to reblaze every 3 to 4 years depending. Other considerations with blazing involve assessing whether or not your trail is over or under blazed. So ideally, you'd want to see one blaze at a time, be able to take a few steps, identify a good sight line, and then see another blaze. Make sure you're clearing blazed areas of surrounding vegetation, especially during the summer months. And don't forget that blazing is bidirectional. However, blazing the same tree in both directions may not be the best choice. Some trees may not be as noticeable to hikers one way over the other. Sharp turns warrant double crossing blazes, as you see on the PowerPoint, such as the trail left or trail right symbols. These should be used for rigid turns and not gentle curves. And often adopters create their own blazing kits, so you have everything you need when you're out in the field. Items in these kits could include a paint scraper, 2-inch paintbrush, rag, resealable container for the paint, and possibly some paint thinner. A pro tip would be to wear your painter's clothes because you will come back blue. And now I'm going to pass it to Kenny.
Hi, Kenny Wazik, and I'm the one who covers just one state in Michigan. So there's all sorts of different signage options out there to help hikers find their way. We'll start with urban blazing, which uses metal brackets with 2x6-inch blue stickers adhered to the metal plate. These can be wrapped around light posts and other various fixtures, but just make sure to receive permissions from the local municipality before doing so, much like anything else. Our spur trails are marked by white 2x6-inch blazes, and these lead to parking areas or points of interest like an overlook or other resources. Often you'll see brown flexible posts with stickers along the trail, and these are commonly called carcinites, and they're placed at road crossings, when entering the trail at a trailhead, or when there are no trees to paint those blazes on. Stickers can be ordered through the MPS and try to be consistent with how the stickers are laid out. Also, a little trick is to clean the carcinite post with Windex or some other cleaning solution before placing the sticker on. Carcinites are made of fiberglass, and sometimes that powder is left on, which doesn't allow the sticker to properly adhere. Then, because they're made of fiberglass, be sure to wear gloves when messing around with them. You don't want fiberglass splinters in your hands. There's also private property signs or decals that inform hikers a section of trail is on private land and to be sure to stay on the trail. And overall, just make sure that informational panels, destination signage, registration boxes, and kiosks are clean and solid. So for structures, if you have a structure such as a bridge, boardwalk, or puncheon on your section of trail, just make sure that they're solid. No loose boards, the wood isn't deteriorating, they're level, and so on. If they're not, just report it to your chapter leaders. Depending on the type of fix, varies on permissions that may be needed. There's a possibility that a section of trail may have never been GPSed, or probably a better possibility that one day it was moved and then never GPSed. If you have the resources, and really a smartphone is all you need nowadays, turn on your GPS while you hike and compare it what the NCTA has on their maps. There are a lot of different apps out there to do so. Strava, Gaia. We have our new Far Out app that the NCTA is on now. Those are a few good ones that you can log your tracks and are easy to use. We also have our free downloadable PDF maps that can be printed off at home or viewed on the Venza app. You can use these out in the field without self-service to see where you're at in relation to the trail. And then just know that these GPS tracks can vary by so many feet depending on numerous factors. But if there's a section that's off, the NCTA office would love to know about it. Just compare your line to the Venza map, that Far Out app if you have it, or online interactive map while you're at home. If your track doesn't line up at all with the NCT data, just let your leadership know or us RTCs. And then, of course, to do all this work, you need the proper tools. Your chapter should have a stock set of tools, including loppers, handsaws, McLeods, Pulaskis, hazel hoes, rakes, etc. Be sure to know how to properly use them before heading out and how to keep them clean and sharp. We even have a tool maintenance video on that volunteer resource page on our website. And just know that they're all dangerous in their own way. So spacing, PPE, and proper use is critical. So besides the typical hazards that you need to be aware of, there are other things lurking out around in the woods. The threatened and endangered species, diseases, invasive species are now major issues. Organizations are spending a lot of time and money trying to control the spread of disease and invasives. And many of our chapters are teamed up with their local conservation groups to assist with identifying and removing those species. As maintainers, you walk a section of trail numerous times. So even if you don't have a keen eye for what to look for, if something is new, looks off, or is taking over an area, chances are it's invasive. Take a photo, ask those organizations or someone who does know, and better safe than sorry, and they'll appreciate it in the long run. There's certain things like oat wilt. They have a recommended no cut period. depending where you're at. It's typically from spring to early summer, which is just the main growing season. There are also different times of year where flowering occurs, or you shouldn't mow because you can easily spread the seeds. Or maybe there's a certain rare species that has been found in the area and you can't mow at all, or there are certain restrictions. Your chapter can relay that information to you if it pertains to your particular section, but just try to be aware and do your part to help control the spread and protect those particular species. So we'll flip back over to Stephanie.
Great. Thanks, everyone. So basically now is time for questions. We just want to say thank you to everybody for all the work that you do on the trail and for coming and attending this workshop. And so we just want to have, we have 15 minutes now where we can answer questions or we can discuss any best practices that folks have found in doing this work.
Can I just add real quick, Stephanie, that we, I neglected to say this at the beginning and meant to, that we hope to do a lot more of these virtual workshops. We realize that, you know, while there's no substitute for being in person, you know, this is a great way to reach a lot of people. We did this adopter workshop last year, maybe 2 years ago, I think it was last year, and didn't record it. And since then have had a lot of people say, hey, do you have a recording of that so I could send it out to the new adopters in my section? And unfortunately we didn't. So we recorded tonight. We will share it out with you all, and please feel free to share this webinar with anyone that is interested in adopting a section of trail. We'd be happy to share any of the slides we put together, of course, any of the resources that we shared. And if you have ideas for future workshops that would make good sense for a virtual workshop like this, please don't hesitate to share with your regional trail coordinator. And with that, I'm going to stop screen sharing and try to get any questions here.
Hi, this is Brad Stewart. I have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead, Brad.
So are there any videos available that show how to use the tools? That's one of the challenges sometimes when working with people is not necessarily always being trained on how to use the unique tools on the trail. I know Kenny mentioned the one about tool maintenance, but mine is about utilization. Thank you.
That's a good point. We'll write that down and maybe that's something we can come up with. We don't have anything like that, but you're right. There's a way to use a tool and a safe way to use a tool, not only for other people, but for your own body. So good point. Thanks for bringing that up, Brad.
Yeah, thanks so much. All right, Chuck, do you want to ask your question?
Sure, thank you. Most of the maintenance I've done is in heavily forested areas, and we've been using the larger DR mowers. Just recently, the chapter has purchased a typical residential self-propelled Honda lawnmower that people would typically buy for their home. But I've used it a couple times, and particularly in those heavily forested areas where the grass is not real thick or the vegetation, it seems to work really well and a whole lot easier to control, especially on some sloped areas. Is anyone else out there using, again, a pretty typical residential lawnmower as their trail maintenance tool?
I would say I feel like I've seen them in some of our Michigan chapters, not a lot of them, but it makes sense because they're super lightweight. You can carry them easily or unload them, haul them easier. Also, as my Forest Service background, we used to use those to mow sites which were not real grass. It was more like mowing weeds. So those came in handy. So yeah, that's a good point. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mark, did you want to answer that or did you have another question?
I have another question.
Okay.
I would just add, Stephanie, to get
Yeah.
at the smaller mower. DR does make a string trimmer mower, which is basically like a weed eater on wheels that is maybe somewhere in between the normal residential lawnmower and the big DR brush mower. Weighs like 75 pounds or 90 pounds or something like that. So it's certainly a lot easier than a brush mower to navigate. It fits in the back of a Honda Civic. I can speak from experience with that. So yeah, there's some other options out there.
Over the shoulder gas brush cutters too are really popular as well.
Hey, Matt, this is Chuck. What you just described, is that self-propelled?
It is, yeah. They do make self-propelled options. And then there's other companies that make non-self-propelled options, and it's definitely worth spending the extra money to get that self-propelled, because if you've got a long section, at the end, if you're pushing it up a hill, it might as well be pushing it up Mount Everest.
That's what I experienced yesterday from 400th to County Highway 26.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Thanks, Chuck. All right, Mark.
Yeah, it's nice that you mention all these things, the DR mower, the even the self-propelled home style mower, all the other handy equipment and tools. My big question and the biggest problem we have right now is facility. We have no place to put these things where they can be readily available to those who are available to use them in a timely manner. It's nice when you have someone who can donate the space, but they're not always available and may not want everybody getting in and out of their garage or whatever where they may be storing it. So has anything been done to address the issue of facility that could be centrally located where the stewards could have access to these tools and or other supplies to help in maintaining their sections?
Would
I'm
say
sure
that-
there are.
Oh, go ahead, Matt.
I was just gonna say, I'm sure there's about as many answers as there are, people on this call. I've seen, and I know Kenny and Matt both have input here, but I've seen it all across the track. I've seen, people working with land management partners. Sometimes a forest, a park, somewhere will have a boneyard or a little extra space that they don't mind giving up. A lot of our chapters have enclosed trailers that they kind of use as tool storage, a mobile kind of shed. So I recognize you still need somewhere to park that, but that's a little easier sometimes, a little easier of a sell sometimes than, hey, can we have a corner in your shop? Sometimes that's just a place to park a trailer is pretty easy. So I don't know, Kenny or Matt, if you have more specific examples.
I was just going to throw out one that was kind of innovative. The Star of the North chapter here in Minnesota actually parks their tool trailer at the Reamer City garage. So it's a area that probably has security cameras. It's conveniently located, and it has people going in and out. So there's some security there. So beyond the land management partners, look to trail towns. Ask the community is there a way that they can help. Provide that valuable, because it's a limiting factor if the stuff's not readily available and easy to get to for trail adopters.
Anything else you want to add, Kenny? Good.
No, I got
I know
it.
we've talked about it, Mark, but we'll keep working on it.
And
Brett?
this is,
Oh, go ahead.
yeah, this is Brad.
go ahead, Brad.
So in a couple of chapters that I've been in, what we've done is pre-stage, just that was discussed, a trailer at a location, whether it's a DNR site or, as Matt mentioned, a city location, and then able to lock up all the doors and the tongue or the hitch, either with a combination lock that you can share or a hide a key capability that someone can be able to basically sign out and get access to that trailer. The other thing we've done is the president or the trail manager issues out or gives out trail tools to those adopters on I won't say permanent basis, but as long as they're a adopter, then they can have those tools readily available for them to take with them whenever they go work out on the trail, to include the loppers, the McLeods, and Pulaskis, et cetera. So those have worked pretty well for us.
Thank you, Brad. Okay, Brett?
Yeah, just a quick one on far out. I didn't know if you guys had talked about possibly breaking that up into sections. I know it's $75 doesn't sound like a lot, but it kind of is for, you know, certain hikers. I know the AT is broken out into many sections where you can buy at a time as you hike. Just thought it might be an option if you're not getting people to join into it, because it really doesn't work unless you have people using the app, you know.
You are able to buy individual states, I believe.
Oh,
Right?
I was not able to, but I'll do some more digging.
Shoot one of us an email. We might be able to help you get access to that. I hope I'm saying the right thing.
Yeah, that was
pretty
my
sure.
understanding.
Yeah, I've been using Fire for years now, but back when it was gut hooks, and it's always been broken out by segments, but not so much from what I've seen out on the North Country Trail. So
Yeah, if you
Oh,
want to shoot
cool.
one of us an email, you know, if you want to shoot your regional trail coordinator or me an email, we'll drop our contact information here. And
Okay,
definitely should be able to help you out with that.
Yeah,
sounds good.
thank you, Brad. All right, John? Oh, John, you're muted. Sorry.
The design handbook indicates that puncheon should be 28 or 36-inch wide, depending on the trail classification. And the picture of the puncheon that was shown in one of your last slides was evidently not even 28-inch wide. What is the North Country Trail's position on how wide puncheon should be?
There's primitive areas, semi-primitive, rural areas. So it all kind of depends on the location and the land manager too. Probably more specifically land manager. Because anything that you build needs their permission first, and chances are they have their standards. But if you're, let's say, like a private landowner or private timber, really what we strive for, and maybe something that we'll update, is to reach ADA standards no matter what. We don't want to build a structure that is a barrier if there's a way for them to reach that structure. And there's all sorts of different ways. And I know we think a lot of times that, you know, the trail is not ADA spec, but there's ways to get out there nowadays. And so we don't want our structures to be barriers to anybody to have access to. So typically ADA meets 36 inches wide. So we kind of strive for that now, but again, deal with the land manager and they can help guide you.
That helpful, John?
Yeah, that helps. I guess just the question, that picture that was shown, was that primitive area or was that probably an older one?
There's a lot of structures that don't meet that guideline. Lots of two-board puncheon. Yeah, you'll see everything on the North Country Trail.
Okay, thanks.
No easy answer. All right, I think Dan Dewicki, did you have your question answered? How does the water run off if the outslope is bermed?
Yes, it was answered.
Okay, great. All right. So If no one has any other questions, we are almost at exactly an hour. So I appreciate everybody's time here, and look out for more opportunities to get involved, to learn, to be trained up. And we'll have this recorded. So for those who could not attend, we will you'll be able to send that out to other folks, and they can make sure to get this great information, and we'll follow up with those we need to follow up with. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you all. Have a great night.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thanks, everybody.
guys.
Appreciate it.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.